worst case scenario, I think one of the things that a lot of, my friends and colleagues, et cetera, that aren't invested or, connected to the AI world, they just think, oh, AI will take care of that, right? I'll just have some AI tool on my computer or on my email and it'll check everything and it'll tell me what's good and what's not. So why do I even need to bother? I'm assuming that they're wrong about this.
The AI is going to change the world so much that we can't even fathom what it will look like, I think AI is going to do that to us where in 10 years' time, we're not going to recognize the world as it exists right now.
We're going through something absolutely historic.
Technologies across the board are growing exponentially.
It's a disruption that's going to completely redefine the way businesses compete.
In the next decade, we're going to lose 40% of today's Fortune 500 companies.
The exponential growth of computing is continuing.
AI is nowhere near its full potential.
Whether you like it or not, that the future cannot be stopped by anyone.
Welcome back to the Future Tech and Foresight podcast. I'm your AI host, Mark Verbankov's deepfake avatar, and this is episode number 209. Cybersecurity has transformed dramatically over the past 3 decades, and this episode unpacks that evolution through the lens of real industry experience. The conversation covers how the field grew from niche firewall roles in the 90s to a vast, mature ecosystem of specialties, and why demand for security expertise has created a surge in fractional and virtual CISO services. Marc and Craig explore the global explosion of cybercrime, the rise of organized criminal networks, and the increasing use of AI to enhance phishing, automate attacks, and orchestrate sophisticated extortion operations. The discussion also examines how traditional security practices are falling behind modern threats, from outdated password policies to ineffective punishment-based employee training. Craig explains why positive reinforcement, gamification, and continuous microlearning are far more effective at building resilient organizations. The episode further dives into emerging challenges created by remote work, improper use of public AI tools, and the expanding dark web ecosystem where stolen data circulates at massive scale. Looking forward, Marc and Craig discuss how AI will reshape cybersecurity defenses, the limitations of automation in human-centric interactions, and the need for individuals to adopt proactive protections such as credit freezes, passkeys, and password managers. The episode ultimately highlights why cybersecurity literacy is becoming essential for everyone, not just experts, as digital threats grow more frequent, more sophisticated, and more deeply intertwined with daily life. Now, a little bit about the guest. Craig M. Taylor is a seasoned cybersecurity expert and entrepreneur with nearly 30 years of experience managing risk across industries, from Fortune 500 corporations to SMBs. As the co-founder and CISO of CyberHoot, he has pioneered a positive reinforcement approach to cybersecurity education, helping businesses eliminate risky behaviors and build a culture of security awareness. Over his career, he has led enterprise security programs at Chase Paymentech, Vistaprint, and DXC Technology, formerly CSC, where he developed cutting-edge risk management frameworks, compliance programs, and cybersecurity roadmaps. His expertise spans incident response, governance, and security program development, making him a sought-after leader in the cybersecurity space.
Great. Well, Craig, thank you very much for coming onto the podcast today to talk to us about cybersecurity, maybe a little bit about the past of cybersecurity, and certainly what the future is going to hold for it. So thanks for taking the time to join.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Mark. Thanks for having me.
So how I like to start each conversation is to get a little bit of a sense of what brought you into the industry that you're involved in now. If there was like a moment or an interesting event, or if you were just always kind of preordained to work in cybersecurity. Very curious to hear.
Well, it depends on if you were asking 30 years ago when I got into cyber, or if you're asking why I founded my company, Cyberhoot. Do you want to clarify?
Yeah. Let's go first. What initially got you into the industry? Yeah.
I was not going to do a PhD in psychology. So I got a degree in psychology 35 years ago, and I studied what makes people tick. How do they learn? What motivates them to learn? What don't they like? Operant conditioning, all that fancy psycho mumbo jumbo. But decided that schooling and PhD was not in my future. So I went to work in the world and man, this is really dating me because this is before there was a World Wide Web. So
Right.
1995, I was on a news group, and people won't remember or know what that is, but it was a listing of kind of like job advertisements, but on an online forum. And I saw a job opportunity for a firewall vendor, and a firewall vendor being the device you plug in between your company and the internet to protect the inbound and outbound communications from hackers and let good people in, keep bad guys out. And so I started there and been in cybersecurity ever since. So going on 30 plus years. So that's that story. It was one of necessity. Oh, and you couldn't outsource cybersecurity back then. In the 90s, late 90s to early 2000s, everything was being outsourced to different parts of the world. And, jobs were just migrating all over the place. And cybersecurity was one of those secure jobs that stayed here. So that was helpful too.
Is that because the trust needed to be kind of maybe not in-house, but certainly in state or in province or in your own country? You couldn't rely
Exactly.
otherwise. Yeah.
Intuitively, it makes sense, right? If you want the gatekeeper to be someone of you can see, touch, feel, talk to, not somewhere far away in the world that you have to call up to say, "Hey, what happened overnight? Why are my accounts being logged into from remote places?"
Um, right. So, I mean, I think that's a good segue into one of the things that I like to talk about at the beginning of each podcast is how have things changed? Um, I'm assuming that there might be a little bit more remote work now for cybersecurity experts across the world. Um, I think that's one aspect of how the industry has changed. Can you maybe give us a couple others that might be interesting to hear about?
One of the biggest changes is a maturation of the field. So, for example, in 30 years ago, when you were in cybersecurity, which that was a rarity to begin with, but you were always hired full time to the company you worked for, right? And back then, we didn't even call it a CISO role, like a Chief Information Security Officer, CISO role. We just called it everything from information risk management, um, and other names. But what's happened in the last 10 years is a shift from companies wanting to hire a full-time CISO in, anything below mid-enterprise, to a virtual or fractional CISO or CISO. Not sure how you say that.
Mhm, mhm.
And that is like medicine, where you don't hire a doctor full-time for your company, or law, you don't hire a lawyer or a plumber or an electrician or any of the trades. You have them when you need them, and you hire them for specific, requirements. So the industry as a whole has started to latch onto that, and we offer it at my company. We have a body of subcontractors that follow our proven processes and procedures and documentation and approach risk management, to provide virtual CISO services. So that's one really important way because there's a shortage of competent talent in the industry. If you're listening to this and you want to get into cybersecurity, you should for job security, great pay. Maybe in the beginning there are some difficult, let's call it Mike Rowe and dirty jobs that happen inside cybersecurity, because you have to get your experience in some of those SOC analyst role, monitoring for events. Um, there is some tough stuff in the beginning, but once you get to a program management level or even do a degree in the cybersecurity, which didn't exist when I went through,
Mm,
uh, you can land a pretty good six-figure job and be um, happy with what you're doing, largely, I would
right,
say.
right.
So that's been some really nice developments in the industry. There are some areas of maturation that have happened in this relatively new industry called cybersecurity, right? Law has been around for 1,000 years with the Magna Carta in England, and medicine's been around for 200 years with, the Mayo Clinic in the early 1900s, and maybe a little before that was a little quackery, but it's gotten better. And certainly there was holistic medicine long before that. But computers have been around for what, 40, 50 years? And cybersecurity as an adjunct to that is not as old as that. So it's a
Right.
growing field and it's a maturing field.
And is it also maturing and growing because the black hat hatters are getting more sophisticated and they have more tools at their fingertips, if you will?
I would put it more simply than that. They're getting more successful.
Okay.
The third largest economy in the world last year, talking GDP, right? Gross domestic product. The first was the United States, overall, however many trillions of dollars, then China, then cybercrime,
Hmm.
then Germany or India. I'm not sure who was the largest after that, but could have been Korea or Japan. I'm not sure. But at the end of the day, cybercrime is the third largest economy in the world, meaning hackers, organized crime, nation states are extorting businesses all over the world and individuals to the tune of trillions of dollars, at least $10 trillion last year. Do some math on that. Like if you break up $100,000 into a trillion, there's like 100,000 of those events all over the world where people are losing how much money. We do incident response sometimes at my company. We've had 4 major incidents that we've had to deal with this year, coming in with wire fraud and business email compromise and ransomware and data exfiltration, all kinds of nasty stuff. But here's the thing. As a business owner listening to this, you might say, well, I don't believe Craig. Why would I believe him? Reporting this stuff is wickedly underreported. It's almost like, the analogy I use is mental health. If you have a mental illness, you don't go telling anybody because there's a stigma still today, even though there shouldn't be, because it's an illness, a disease. People don't talk about mental illness or when they have challenges, depression, that sort of thing. And the same is true for cyber crimes that get committed. If you don't have to go public with it, you don't. And so no one learns this crazy statistic or the fact that in any one city, half of the companies have been hit with one thing or another, and no one knows about it. So no one does anything proactively to prevent it. It's a tragedy, honestly.
And so I guess there's like a total volume that has been increasing substantially over the last several years. I'm also assuming that the methods have grown exponentially in how they're able to trick people. There's that, and then I also obviously want to understand like individuals versus businesses. Are they is it 50-50? Is it 10%, 100, like 90%? Like what's the breakdown, the ratio there between those hacking?
Well, I don't know from a financial perspective. I would think that the individual crimes against individuals and elder abuse of financial fraud there is rampant. I don't have a statistic at the ready for that. I just know that it's happening to a lot of people individually with, just not knowing better and never learning cybersecurity skills. Because guess what? No one in any educational institution is teaching this today outside of a degree program, the cyber literacy skills. So individuals are being taken advantage of. But to the efficacy, there was a study performed by a Verizon data breach report. I don't know if anyone's heard of that. It's an annual report put out by the company in the United States called Verizon. And they collect data from every single source of breach information they can get, whether it's Interpol, the Australian CERC, all over the world, Germany, Canada, every country has some kind of computer emergency response organization, and they feed their data to Verizon. And Verizon does a multi-relational database analysis of the breach information. And they did a report after studying 20 years of breaches in 2023. So it's only 2 years old. And they said in 2003, the number one way companies were breached was phishing emails. And second, a close second was credential theft, people reusing passwords. And back then, NIST had that crazy advice of 9-character complex, uppercase, lowercase passwords, change them every 90 days. They've since rescinded that and said that was the dumbest thing we ever did. Now you use a password manager, adopt passkeys, multi-factor, and keep them all unique, but don't make them complex and don't expire them. So that's brand new advice. And if you didn't know about that and you're still in one of those companies that changes every 90 days, put up your hand and say, no longer true. Don't do it because your users cheat. And then it leads to really bad password choices.
Interesting.
But in 2023, the same answer was still true. Number one way companies are breached: phishing emails, followed closely by password hygiene issues around reused passwords, no MFA on VPNs. And then a distant third was compromising, 0-day compromises and other things, unpatched systems, that sort of stuff. So while the answer to your question is the volume has grown exponentially because more and more people are recognizing in you know areas of the globe that have less opportunity to what we have maybe here in the United States or in the Western G8 nations. There's a lot of people out there who can make a really good living by attacking other companies around the world, and they can do it through your front door, which is your internet connection, right?
Right.
The volume's gone way up. Now, there have been changes behind the scenes in terms of the tooling. AI is absolutely making tools more available and better at phishing. You can take a social media profile and generate 10 really, really enticing emails that are perfect grammatical, spelling, punctuation, and appealing to your target person if you can get to their social media profile. That's happening. So the results are more damaging. The damage is worse. Now there's double extortion. Years ago, a ransomware attack, you restore your data from backup, you're good to go. But now the hackers have realized, well, if we extract that data before we encrypt it and we delete your backups, we can double extort you. So you can't get your backups to work because we've deleted them, or we can release your information to the public internet when you do get a backup that we didn't know about. It was an offline backup and when you restored your data. Okay, well, we got something for that. We're just going to start feeding your privileged legal briefs to the internet about this and that embarrassing situation, or the financial records of your accounting firm. You go down the list, any kind of critical and sensitive data gets threatened to be released, and you got to pay the ransom to prevent that. So there's more and more of it because people are it's getting easier to enter with automated tools. Even the hacking groups are doing like a Henry Ford approach. You know how Henry Ford created the assembly line and the Model T, and he had one person, one area they painted the frames, and another they put the wheels on, and another they bolted on, blah blah blah, the engine. Hacking groups have actually, we blogged about this recently. They've gotten and they're taking specific tasks and specializing in them. So one hacking organization might be really good at breaching a company, but they don't want to get caught with the breach by ransoming it and generating that kind of attention to them. So they sell the breach data, the breach access to the ransomware companies, that the hacking groups that can then do the extortion component, or to the nation state that wants a competitive advantage if it's a technical company that has strategic data in it. So they've got these specific organizations within hacking groups that, make it even harder to track it back to who did what, attribution, that sort of thing. So yeah, there's been a lot of development in the last few years. Our adversaries are getting much, much better at it, and the challenges are growing.
It's fascinating, really. Do you have a sense, or does anybody have a sense as to how many of these black hat hackers? Like, you're just describing something that's way more sophisticated than what was in my mind about hacking groups, right? If they're breaking down kind of project management level hacking attempts, it's really interesting. It's scary, but it's really interesting. Obviously there are certain nations that have more hackers than others, and they might even be funded by certain nation states. Just at a general level, do you have a general sense about how many people are actually involved in this?
Too many. Honestly, there's no way to know, right? We have really smart people in the NSA and the FBI and the CIA who are tracking different groups of hackers that, you're part of this group or the Revel group or that group. But in terms of how many are in each of those groups, we just don't know because if we knew, we would know who they are. And if we knew who they are, we could extract appropriate measures. But we just don't know. And we do know that nation states are much, especially the embargoed nations like North Korea, Iran, they have a strong motivation to have competent hacking organizations and academies where they train people how to hack and that sort of thing. Um, but don't stop there, because Israel, the United States, Canada, all the Western countries, they have an offensive and defensive capability as well. And so there's almost like this mutually assured destruction of access to the remote sides infrastructure and world. And so if anybody, pulls a switch here, we can pull a switch there and vice versa. So there's almost a detente there. But having said that, it's the organized crime and the hacker for hire that is really growing like crazy, because if you're in, say, a backwater country where there's not a lot of opportunity, and someone drives up to the internet cafe in a fancy new car,
Mm,
word gets out that that person had a great score on a ransomware event, and everybody wants to get in and start doing it themselves. And so
right.
it,
Right.
it, it, it avalanches, right?
Um, Maybe one of the final questions on this theme here. You're mentioning, obviously the ransoms that are given to companies, given to individuals. How often, once paid, do the hackers give back that data or not release that data?
This is a very contentious question and answer, because you talk to different people and they say different things.
Mm,
Um, in our experience, when you pay the ransom after negotiating, because you always negotiate it down, there are even companies that you can hire to negotiate your ransomware payment. Um, Generally speaking, you do get your data back, or you get it so that it's not released to the internet,
mm,
or both. And there are some people out there who say, Craig, you should never say that, because when you pay the ransom, you grow the industry and you make more people become ransomware hackers and that sort of thing. But we know that there's even customer support phone numbers to call if you having trouble decrypting. When you get the decryptor key to unlock your encrypted data,
mhm.
you're having trouble, you can call to get the answers. And it makes sense from a project management, from a business perspective. If you want other people to pay ransoms, and as a ransomware group, you have a reputation to uphold. You've got to give the keys back, not release the data, hold true to your morals to deliver what you say you're going to deliver, or else word will get out that if you pay that ransomware group, they don't have a habit of paying. They don't have a habit of returning your data, or they release it anyways. And so there are reputations scores for hacking groups. And, that's part of those breach negotiators. They're like, oh, this is one of those groups that you don't want to try and pay if you can help it. And this is one that you can pay. So, because they're very good about restoring your data. So it varies. Most of the time you can get it back if you run the course of following best practices and hiring a breach counsel and a negotiator to help you out. They have some pretty good insights on what you might expect.
Very interesting. Yeah, it's just like any other business. In a service.
The customer support and rating and all that, 'cause it's the third largest economy in the world. You got to believe they're getting organized and really good at this.
Yeah, crazy. We spoke a little bit before, to change the subject a bit, before the recording, about the internal shifts within the industry. So, we're
Mhm.
talking about black hat. Maybe we can touch a little bit more about the white hat hackers, which is, more relevant for you. You mentioned that there's this labor shortage in the industry. You were also talking a little bit about the need for change in the industry itself, like how
Yes.
people are trained. Can you touch on that? Because I think that's quite interesting.
Sure. Well, as I started out saying 30 years ago, I have a psychology degree in which I studied how behaviors are changed, right? If you think of a slot machine, that's one of the most powerful behavior modification devices known to mankind or humankind. You put in a quarter, you pull the lever, you might get some big payout, but usually you don't. So you keep pushing and pulling and inserting and going. And people get addicted to these things, right? because it's an intermittent reward schedule. You just never know when you're going to get that treat or that wonderful thing. But in the cybersecurity industry, for right or for wrong, for the last 25, 30 years, we've been very focused on preventing people from clicking on the bad links that lead to ransomware, business email compromise, session token theft, all the bad things that come from when you click a link that you shouldn't. And so there's been this mistaken idea of punishing the clicks, which is punishing essentially the bad behavior. Unfortunately, that doesn't change employee behaviors. In fact, it leads to disengagement. I talked to a buddy of mine who is really smart not too long ago. I'll call him Joe. And he said, Craig, your company is designed to teach people how to phish, but at my company, they don't do that. They just punish us for clicking. So after failing my last phishing test, I gave up and said, fine, I'm going to forward everything to IT. If there's a link in it and I don't know anything about this, I'm forwarding it to IT, because they were disengaged from responsibility. They had said, enough's enough. I don't want to be punished. I don't want to make a mistake. And no one's taught me how to not do that, because I made a mistake and I'm a smart guy. So I just forwarded to IT. That's endemic to the industry, this disengagement, this lack of understanding of how phishing works, and which is, again, 2003, 2023, the number one way companies are breached. If you punish your employees' bad behaviors without rewarding the good behaviors, you've lost the battle. And so the industry needs to reorient on positive reinforcement, on gamification, on rewarding the good behaviors you want to see more of, walking people through an email from the typo squatted domain name, or when a hacker wants to hack you, they're going to register a domain name to send an email as though it looks like it's coming from netflix.com, for example.
Right.
So drop the I in Netflix, so it'll be netflx.com. And to the average user who's gotten a lot of these gotcha emails, the fake email attack phish, they don't know that that's how it works, because when you use attack phish, when you use this gotcha email, you cannot pretend to be Netflix with an I missing, because a single report of it as spam by an end user will go to Netflix. Netflix will go to the vendor and say, do not impersonate us. Take that down. You cannot use that domain name. And so you can't use realistic domain names in fake email phish testing. This is getting in the weeds, so I don't want to go too far down this path. But in our Hootfish example that we send to you, we show you a netflix.com domain missing the I, and we ask you specifically to look for typo squatting mistakes, like an M turned into an R and an N, or an I dropped, or a period in the wrong place. These are all the kinds of things that advanced hackers are using to breach our companies, that every person listening to this, every company, every employee needs to understand. The good news is it's not rocket science. The bad news is it's not being taught. Instead, it's being punish the clicks, punish the clickers. So we've taken a positive approach, and I think the whole industry needs to focus on teaching the good behaviors you want to see more of. And the analogies are endless. You can talk about parenting a child with a temper tantrum. You don't shout at the child and punish them for the temper tantrum. You talk to them when help them calm down and talk to them about their feelings and their emotions, and you teach them good behaviors. And then when they show those good behaviors, what do? Attaboy, Susie and Johnny, good job. I saw you use your words that time instead of pushing your brother down the stairs. Okay, good job, and you reward that. And guess what? Then it becomes internalized. Then the child changes their behaviors and it sticks because they feel better doing it that way. Your employees feel better when they understand phishing, how it works, why it works, and that they can attain that knowledge and be confident, efficient, secure at processing this stuff. So I'm sorry for the diatribe. I'm very passionate about this, but my psychology, my education, and my cyber, they all form this central concept of gamify and reward your employees for engaging, and then reward them with minor little rewards for doing, and then they'll get it, and they will learn, and they will become the best human firewalls you can have.
So I would agree with you, although I'm, not super knowledgeable in this. It definitely sounds like the right approach. So clearly, this is one of the things that you guys are pushing forward. What kind of feedback or pushback have you been getting in the attempt to make this kind of a standardized norm within your industry?
Well, we have 3 universities in the United States that have started an IRB approved study
Hmm.
to measure 2 things: the affect, how do people feel doing these positive gamification exercises, and the effect, how do they perform in spotting subsequent fake email phishing tests. And we think from studying the literature of psychology, there's a study actually that proves that the fake email phishing test doesn't work, that's coming out in 2 weeks' time at Black Hat. The University of Chicago, University of San Diego combined forces to study 20,000 users in the United States and measured their ability to spot phishing after receiving these gotcha emails that, are designed to trick you into clicking on links you shouldn't, and then sending you video training afterwards when you make a mistake. They found 2 things: only 1% change, which is not enough, might even not be statistically significant. And then secondly, they saw 10 seconds of average engagement on the video you were sent to watch that was probably 30 to 40 minutes long before people gave up watching and attention. So the disengagement was off the charts, meaning no one's learning this stuff. They're just mad because they failed something. And then with our Hootfish, we know for a fact that when you're in the CyberHoots phishing simulator, it takes 30 to 60 seconds to go through this exercise where you're learning the sender, the subject, the greeting, the spelling, punctuation, and grammar, the urgency and emotionality, the links and the attachments. Those are 7 puzzle pieces which we construct into a crystal clear picture for you. And we know there's engagement. And we know people do it. We've heard people talk about printing off the certificates of completion as a badge of honor in their cubicle at work. Others have emailed us saying, why did my colleague have a bigger owl, a more defensive, higher level avatar owl that represents their cyber literacy? It's a little game that we put into the thing that you get this different owls that grow in their ferocity and level of defensive lookingness. How come my colleague's ahead of me?
Mm.
Well, you didn't do your assignment on time and you didn't get perfect scores like they got. So you passed it and you're doing great, but they just did their assignment on time and perfectly, and you weren't quite there, but you will get there. So just keep trying. So we're trying to make it a little friendly competition to keep that engagement going. And it's working. It's really working. A lot of educators are using us now and other things. But to get to your fundamental point, cybersecurity needs to recognize the multidisciplinary approach and say, psychology is known for 80 years that a slot machine with an intermittent reward schedule can change behaviors like no other. And punishment theory shows that it's only an external force that if you remove the punishment, or if there's a really attractive squirrel across the street, that shock collar on your dog is going to be of no use. The dog's going to rip across the road and maybe get killed because that rabbit is too enticing. And that really perfect AI built phishing email sent to your CFO is going to be too hard not to click on unless you know exactly how to spot it properly.
Well, maybe that's an answer to the next question that I had here is, if this internal industry shift doesn't happen and you get all of these maybe growing numbers of hackers now being super powered or supercharged with the AI tools at their disposal, to me it sounds like the hackers are going to have way more opportunity, and they're going to be able to trick businesses and individuals at a higher rate than before, because if people are disengaged with the education and the knowledge that they need in order to avoid these things, it kind of seems like there's going to be some potential point down the road where businesses and individuals are just going to get hacked almost daily, like individual people multiple times a day. No.
I don't know if it'd be multiple times a day of individual people and businesses, but it is an epidemic.
Yeah.
It's an underreported epidemic. We've been called up 4 or 5 times this year for major incidents, and that hasn't happened in previous years. It's getting worse. not better. And I think there's an opportunity, if you're a business owner listening to this, if you're a young person listening to this, there's an opportunity for you to try the positive rewards version of things. If you go to cyberhoot.com/individuals, we give our platform away for free to individuals. So if you want, I'll send you in the show notes. You can put that in there. But any person, whether they're a CFO at a company or an individual, could sign up for free and start to learn a positive way to gain cyber literacy skills or cyber smarts, and that are fun and engaging and not very long. It doesn't take, the videos are 3 to 5 minutes and the Hootfish takes 30 seconds to 60 seconds to complete. And that's all free for life. I mean, we don't turn it off when you get to a certain level. You can keep going to get that muscle memory. So there's that. But I think as these Black Hat conference presentation will show, and the white paper we've written that goes with it, saying we knew this already, you're just confirming it with empirical research that bothering your employees and punishing their bad behaviors instead of rewarding their good behaviors doesn't work. It doesn't change behaviors. It just causes frustration and anxiety and disengagement. But that's going to have to sink into the industry as a whole. And then I've seen recently on Reddit, there's some cybersecurity firms asking about more ways to get better engagement. I've even offered some of our best practices around avatars and certificates and making things fun, entertaining, in addition to educational. Those are all good ways. So I think it's just a matter of time before the industry starts to shift.
Hmm.
If
Well,
I'm honest.
Hopefully. And maybe another question about, as this is a future focused podcast, if this doesn't happen, right? Worst case scenario, I think one of the things that a lot of, my friends and colleagues, et cetera, that aren't invested or, connected to the AI world, they just think, oh, AI will take care of that, right? I'll just have some AI tool on my computer, on my email, and it'll check everything and it'll tell me what's good and what's not. So why do I even need to bother? I'm assuming that they're wrong about this. Could you touch on that point a little bit?
I think there's always going to be a manual effort around interpersonal communication. And if there's a manual effort around interpersonal communication, mistakes will be made. I do also agree with that surmise. What you just presented is that AI will have the ability, for example, to identify typo squatted domain names. 100% agree with that. And it might be able to sort your inbox or even automatically respond to this kind of an email, send out that kind of a response. AI is going to change the world so much that we can't even fathom what it will look like.
Yeah.
It's almost like, in I think there was a Marvel movie. Who was the guy with the shield? Mr.
Captain America?
Captain America. He went into hibernation. I don't know, he comes out, he's like, I don't recognize this world anymore. It's so different. I think AI is going to do that to us, where in 10 years' time, we're not going to recognize the world as it exists right now. That's saying something. It's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's almost happening every single day, right? Like I just got the ChatGPT agent tool. So I'm up here in Canada, so it got released to us a little bit later.
What part?
Just outside of Vancouver.
Vancouver. Okay.
Yeah,
So I've been to Whitehorse. I've been to Vancouver Island. I would have born in Canada. So I'm very familiar, all the way up to Prince Rupert and north to Whitehorse and to a place where the mosquitoes are bigger, as all this tree planting. So I have a very deep ties to the West Coast and tree planting.
Excellent. Well, it's a beautiful part of the world for sure.
It is gorgeous.
Yeah, no, really nice. This actually kind of connects to, and I notice our time is winding down here a little bit, to, post COVID, the world has gotten a lot more remote, right? Like, as I mentioned to you before the recording, I have a remote team. There's 10, 12, 13 of us working remotely. The world is getting more remote because, office buildings you don't need to have a team in an office anymore. That's I think one of the lessons from COVID. How is that tied to cybersecurity and these black hat hackers, are remote teams more susceptible, or do they have a bigger target on their backs than, say, a team working in an office?
I think they're easier to hack because you don't have a colleague sitting at the desk where you can call over and say, "Hey, look at this email with me. There's something not right about it.
Right.
Would you do this?" And that your colleague would say, "Come on, isn't it obvious?" Or maybe not. Maybe they would both be fooled by it. I think remote workers just means a new set of rules about how you engage with your company data, how you share it, what's allowed. One of the biggest concerns that I hear about from CIOs, chief information officers at companies, and CTOs, technical officers, is I'm very afraid of my employees putting our privileged, sensitive information into a public LLM and
Yes.
consuming it and spitting it out to our competitors, right?
Yes.
That's happening because when you're on ChatGPT, that's a public LLM and it consumes you. Did you know if you search ChatGPT right now for a positive reinforcement phishing tool, you'll find Cyberhoot? We've trained it on public domain information, and now we get referrals from ChatGPT every day.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So that's a good example, but the bad example is taking your recipe for Coca-Cola and saying, tell me how I can get cheaper, ingredients for making Coca-Cola with this recipe. And suddenly someone else out there can say, tell me how do you make Coke? And here's your recipe. How'd you get it? Well, I don't know. It's just there.
Right.
So these are very dangerous things. So lots and lots of things. When you're working remote, you need to have governance policies. You need to have a cybersecurity program at your company that lays out how do you engage with AI. Everybody needs to get on the AI bandwagon so that you're not left behind as a company, because it becomes a strategic disadvantage if you're not leveraging the power of AI. But then you need to do it in intelligent ways. And the only way to do that intelligently is to get a policy, to talk to experts, to figure out how are we going to put a private LLM, make it available to our employees to use. Microsoft Copilot is allegedly a private LLM for the users of O365. There have been a couple of little minor blips where they said, well, we think something might have escaped once, but we patched that or we don't allow that, and they fixed it. Okay, it's better than nothing, right? And so, or people doing what they want. Like, remember when everybody went to work from home, no one could print to their home printer. So what
Right.
does they do? Email it to your personal email and print it that way.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's breaking all the best practices and rules, right? You can't do that. So you have to find ways to enable your staff working remotely to use the best tools that they need to be effective, to be productive,
Yeah.
but do so smartly. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think the whole LLM revolution that we're going through. I mean, I obviously have multiple guests coming on just talking about that, and it's I think it's more complex than anybody thinks about, and it's gonna be faster than what we think about as well, right?
Mhm.
The impacts are just, yeah, it's gonna keep coming. But there's also, tremendous benefits to it, right? If it can be part of the solution to improving cybersecurity across businesses and individuals' lives, then, that's one thing that, I think we should all be clapping and saying thank you for. Yeah.
I
Uh,
agree.
um No, Craig, there's so many other things I want to talk to you about, but I see our time is winding down, and I know you have to run. Um, I have to ask, what about dark web threats? Because this is I've had a number of cybersecurity experts on, and I don't think we've ever talked about it. Could you just give us a quick summary of
Sure.
dark web threats before we have to end this discussion?
So the takeaway message is all of our data, our social security numbers, our home addresses, our salary information, it's already out there in the dark web. It's been there for years, and it's probably duplicated multiple times. If you do a search for the N as in Nancy, P as in Paul, D as in David, NPD breach website, you'll find one of the breaches from last fall that had financial data on almost every American, can list your social or a redacted component of your social security number and every address that you've ever lived at. maybe some other details. I didn't interrogate it too heavily, but I know my data has been out there, and just about everybody else is out there. So what do you do in that scenario? Because the dark web and monitoring and all that stuff, what we see is the iceberg above the waterline. It's like old expired data that's no longer useful. When we go and search your dark web data for our own oldest email, I get stuff from a breach in 2014 of LinkedIn, and there is some newer stuff that's maybe a year old or 6 months old, but it's no longer really useful to hackers because it's if it's in the public dark web, like in the stuff that white hat hackers can access, it's no longer useful. If it's in the dark, like offline or private chat rooms in the dark web, that's where they're making money selling this data to other hacking groups to take advantage of it. So it's of limited utility other than to prove a point. You need to adopt a password manager. You need to adopt pass keys wherever possible. You need to educate your employees on the risks of poor password hygiene, poor password management, and these things, right? And the best advice I can give you is to freeze your credit score here in the United States. Anyone abroad, unfortunately, Canada doesn't have the ability to freeze your credit. Some other places in the world, they don't allow you to freeze your credit. Here in the US, you can freeze your credit, which means the fire can't start, right? When you get these notifications in the mail, you've probably gotten one. We've lost your data. We're going to monitor your credit for you. Just sign up here and you'll be told when your data has been breached and is on fire. But it's too late then, right? Wouldn't it be better if you could just prevent the fire in the beginning? Well, you do by freezing it, because any vendor in the world that wants to give you credit has to have your credit score. Without that, you can't even get a decision made. So there's no credit card in your name, there's no loan in your name or in the name of a hacker who has that data. So freezing it is great, and then you unfreeze it for a short period of time with the vendor that's going to query it, that's going to give you that Home Depot card, or in Canada, I forget the name of Home Depot in Canada.
We have Home Depot.
You have Home Depot, but there's
Yeah,
another one. There's a Canadian version of it too. Oh, Canadian Tire, but this is this one. There's even newer ones. There's other ones, but
Reno or something like that. If I'm
yeah. So I
like
think
that.
so.
Yeah.
So freezing your credit is really critical, but you can't just freeze it in 1, 2, or 3 places. You got to do all of them. There's 5 or 6 or 7. If you want instructions, you can go to our blog on it called cyberhoot.com/cybrary, just go to cyberhoot.com/blog and search the window at the top of the blog for identity theft, that word. And it'll bring up this blog article that walks you through why all our data is out there, and the 6 or 7 credit monitoring agencies like Experian, Equifax, TransUnion, Innovis. And then there's 4 more smaller ones, regional and smaller ones, that have our credit that you can freeze your scores at, because that's where hackers go to query. They don't go to the big ones if they're locked, because these 4 are locked. I can go over to these 4. That's what MPD was. The National Public Database fed Experian, fed all these primary data credit agencies a collection of data that they collected, only they were breached, so all the data was stolen. So it's all out there. Dark web isn't that useful except to prove a point that we need better hygiene around our identities, and to freeze our credit is the best advice I can give you. Was that short enough?
Awesome. Perfect. Just on time. Obviously, I'll have your website up on the show notes, your LinkedIn. Are there any other places that you guys put out on social media, etc.?
Cyberhoot.com is the primary place. We have a blog, cyberhoot.com/blog.
Yeah.
I'll send you some more links for the show notes, but we have 1,000 terms in cybersecurity terms explained in layperson terms
Okay.
with videos under cyberhoot.com/cybrary, CYBRARY, Brary. Yep. We have a newsletter you could subscribe to. So if you don't want to look at our blog each week, we concatenate it into one monthly newsletter with, emerging threats. We talk about session token theft, and what was some recent ones we did? Oh, I don't know. We cover all kinds of topics in that are sort of good to know, common sense stuff with a little bit of facts that we've learned through our experiences.
Awesome. Craig, thank you so much for coming on. Very enjoyable. A lot of new ideas for myself, and I'm sure for the audience as well, and some practical ideas there at the end. So thanks so much for coming on. Really
Mark, it was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
a pleasure.
Well, thanks for listening to this week's Future Tech and Foresight podcast. If you like what you've heard here, there are, of course, a number of ways that you can support the podcast. The best way would be to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or give a rating on Spotify, which you can find a step-by-step explanation for on the futuretechandforesight.com website. Alternatively, feel free to leave a comment either on the episode show notes or the YouTube channel where you can see video recordings of the interviews. And finally, if you are part of an organization that is aware of the disruptive and transformational impact that emerging and future technologies will bring and want to know more, please get in touch to hear about the strategic foresight services that we offer and how we can help future-proof your organization and take advantage of the phenomenal opportunities available to survive and thrive in the future.
A lot of future-shocked people and future-shocked institutions in our society are simply overwhelmed.
Once there is superintelligence, the fate of humanity may depend on what the superintelligence does.
Science fact is catching up to science fiction.
The first truly intelligent machine will be the last invention that humanity needs to make.
The only scarcity that will exist in the future is that which we decide to create ourselves as humans.
Within a 10-year design revolution, we can have all humanity living the highest standard living anybody's ever known.
Progress is accelerating at an exponential pace, and it's going to reach a point where progress is so fast it's going to be a singularity.
We are probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens.
Every single headline points to the birth pangs of a Type 1 civilization.